Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Back for another edition of Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. And Phil, we're both on location or something here.
That's right. We're both on location, out of the office.
We're in different spots right this minute than usual. So you're actually on vacation, and I've been displaced by AC, issues. In the South, well, really anywhere in the country right now, if you ain't got AC running, you're hurting.
It's hot. It's hot.
It's been hot all over the place. So anyway, how you doing, my friend? You doing all right?
Doing good. Loving the summer. So
good. We were just laughing. We were like trying to make this stuff work so we can, continue to do the show here. And it's like, technology could I think we're all like into the point where, do I have to download another app or use an email address or a password? Or something? Can you just buy a product and it just work out of the box without having to jump through a bunch of hoops? Like, I think everybody, especially a certain age,
they would have had it figured out. But
yeah, I think if you're a certain age, like at least 35, at least 40 or older, you're just like, I'm done. I don't want another. I don't want another email, password, log in, blah, blah, blah.
Two-factor authentication, all the other, things that we have to do now because the crooks are getting more.
Well, I mean, even just like
and using AI now. And it's
but I mean, like even everything, like you buy a new laundry machine, washing machine, and they want you to download an app, and this, that, and the other just to turn the thing on. It's like, oh, come on.
Where's the dial? Just
just crazy, right? So anyway, we're gonna be old men for a minute, and although I know a bunch of 20-somethings that are this way too. They're kind of tired of it already. So
that's right.
It's
this
happening.
Technology thing's great, but
Phil, I mean, you're on vacation right now with the kids and the grandkids, and that's part of retirement, right? I mean, so we've done this before, where you've gone out camping with the kids, and I think the idea is like, hey, you can still do things in life, whether you're still on a business or you're still running a business, but you can still also enjoy retirement too. So,
we complain about technology in the beginning, but it does have some advantages.
It can have some advantages. That's true. When it works anyway.
When it works.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I don't have a great segue into our topic. If we were talking about actually lifestyle and retirement, this would be a good one to do this week, but we're actually going to talk about old Dave again. We're going to bring back some Dave Ramsey conversation. The 4% rule, Phil, versus Dave's 8% rule conversation. What's the right withdrawal rate? What's that? Big difference. Yeah. So basically, let me set the table real fast, right? So, basically Dave is recommending, an 8% annual withdrawal rate, from your retirement accounts, which is kind of double the conventional wisdom, right? The rule of thumb. And basically his argument, Phil, is that the market typically returns about 10% annually. So, 8%, technically you're okay. So let's talk about that from that standpoint, why it's probably not a good idea, and just kind of some back and forth on that. So take off wherever you want to.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing to keep in mind is, you're looking at a really high level and looking at averages, the market may have averaged 10% on an annual basis, but the reality is it's not like it's a CD return. It's a 10% every single year. Unfortunately, there's a pretty wide range of what those returns have been. I mean, some years you've lost 50%.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a pretty wide range. I mean, the first thing to even consider is that something that's comfortable? For most retirees, that's not something that's bearable. They may have been used to that and okay with that when they were working because they understood that, it's a temporary loss. I'm not touching the money. If you don't touch it, you're fine. It'll come back, which it will. That fact hasn't changed. But the fact that's changed is now you're taking distributions.
Well, okay. So let me pump the brakes right there for a second. So historically it does come back, but right. I mean, first of all, you have to be realistic and say there's always a first time for it to never come back or to be a big.
I mean, it's a possibility or take longer than it has in the past.
Right. And the big thing for people is that do you have the time horizon and the risk capacity to deal with waiting for it to come back?
And most retirees don't have that, either of those. I mean, they don't have the comfort level, that risk capacity. They're just not comfortable. and they definitely don't have the time horizon. They can't wait.
Yeah.
Unless you're willing to just stop living for a year or two, whatever it takes for the market to come back, and not take distributions. Because the real challenge there is that if you need, and let's just throw a number out, $5,000 a month, you're pulling from your accounts.
Yeah.
Okay. So if the market has fallen 50%, well, you still need 5,000. That doesn't change that fact. That's lifestyle. That's what you need. And now the investments are worth half. So you have to sell twice as many shares just to get the 5,000.
Yeah.
So those shares, twice as many shares, are not coming back because you had to sell them.
Yeah.
So that's the real challenge in retirement. And what changes everything is that there's two stages, right? The accumulation stage, as you built your wealth, getting towards or working towards retirement, you can take some of this volatility, again, if that's something you're comfortable with. Yeah. Because the worst thing to do is at that downtime, decide, well, that's not my comfort level, and change, because now you've locked in those losses. So during the accumulation phase, if you're comfortable with volatility, it'll work. And yeah, you might average around that 10%. During distribution, you don't have that option anymore with all the money, right? I mean, you're living on it. This is what you've saved and accumulated for. So
let's talk about the other piece of this that, that drives this 8% conversation from Dave, is that's also being completely in the market, right? So again, that risk tolerance of that. How comfortable is a 60-year-old with that? Probably not that comfortable. And look, Dave, we all know, we've talked about Dave many times on here. He's got a great empire. He does some good things. Most advisors I know, and I know a lot of them, don't necessarily agree with a lot of the financial retirement side of things. His debt stuff is fantastic, right? So
for the right person, I mean, he's got incredible advice.
Yeah.
But
Well, so the guy who created the 4% rule, and we talked about this was a while back, but we did a podcast on that. He changed the rule and he moved it up to 4.7. I think it was last year. He kind of revised it because he created that rule in the 90s. He never really thought it was going to become like the rule of thumb to go to, but it did. And he even modified that to the 4.7, number that it is now. That's still a far cry from 8.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're still significantly different than an 8%. So it again, with any of these, the challenge is these are rules of thumb, right? This should not, first of all, be your retirement plan. You shouldn't say, I'm going to pull 8% of my portfolio every year, because first of all, the portfolio value changes. So, are you comfortable with that? Is that something that you would want to do? Is this year I'm pulling 8% and the account, the market's up, so that's a bigger number. What happens when the market pulls back next year and now you're having to take a significant pay cut? Well, that's just not how most retirees want to live, and not how you've been comfortable living all your life.
Very true.
So it's not something that to me should be used as a absolute, this is my retirement plan, I'm going to pull 4%. Yeah, it's a great guideline, to understand what at a high level, what is a safe withdrawal rate over a period of time. So, and the interesting thing though, when you even when you start to look at the 4% rule, because there's all sides of that story too. I think Morningstar did a study in 2026 where they went the opposite direction, and they said, well, it really should be 3.9. So what should it, we don't know, right? I mean, somewhere in that 4% is probably a good kind of rule of thumb, right? Good place to start.
Yeah. So let's kind of set a few parameters on that for people. We've talked about this before. We'll use $1 million because it's easy math. If you think if you're doing back of the napkin and you say, hey, 4%, that's 40 grand a year, and you extrapolate that out over, let's say, a 20-year window or whatever the case is, you can kind of get a rough idea. Now you do 8%, you're talking 80 grand a year, right? Now, but what happens if we have, a downturn? What happens if we have now granted, the market has been screaming for a while, but that's all the more reason to kind of pause. And I'll go one further with this, Phil. Every situation's different. Some couples might need to do the 8%, but they may also have a lot on the back end that makes that more feasible. Every situation is going to be different. Where you're at in the in Michigan area, you got a lot of people still with pensions, right?
Right.
So if both people in the house, let's say one's an auto worker with a pension and one's a teacher with a pension, you may not need even 4%. You may not need to pull 40 grand a year, right? So this is where your individual math starts to come into play.
Yeah, and exactly. Everyone's scenario is different. So, and I wanted to touch one real quick thing though on that 4% rule, because the interesting thing that most people don't think about is statistically how they even come up with this is they say if you pull 4% historically, or the 4.7 that they've upped it to now, you have a 90% chance of not running out of money.
Okay.
And running Monte Carlos, meaning you run through 1,000 scenarios and you're ending up somewhere between running out of money and having this massive amount of money left at the end. Well, 90% of the time you don't run out of money, which most people think, okay, that's good. I don't want, I don't want to run out of money. But the reality of it is that's 90% probability that you're underspending, because the reality is over a long period of time, and I see this all the time with clients, is that as you age and you get further into retirement, if you haven't spent comfortably up front, enjoying things, if you've kind of been nervous about it, I've got to stay under a certain level, as you get further into retirement, you end up leaving too much money on the table, right? You didn't get to enjoy the retirement that you wanted. Yeah. So that's really the other side of the 4% rule, is that understand that, it's a 90% chance that you won't run out of money historically. 10% chance you may. Everyone would like 100%, but that means that even in the worst market condition, you didn't run out of money.
Yeah.
And that means without making any kind of adjustments, right? Okay. So that's where a plan really comes into play. So that's why I said the 4% rule isn't a plan. It's just a good guideline. To me, the better option is having a strategy and kind of segregating assets like we've talked about before. We use the now, soon, and later buckets, so that soon bucket is where we're spending from. That's going to be a less aggressive type portfolio where you're not going to be affected by market volatility. The later bucket can have some volatility and some long-term growth, and it might have a significant drawdown depending on comfort level, but we have time.
Yeah.
To get through it there. So again, everyone likes simple. We kind of talked about that in the beginning, right? Everyone's, it's crazy complex now, everything you have to go through. Everyone likes simple, and a rule of thumb like the 4% rule is simple. Yeah. But it comes with a lot of caveats because of that simplicity too. It's not always going to get you the right answer.
Well, final question here on this episode. Do you have people sometimes that come in and they have a specific number in mind? They're like, hey, we've done some basic math. We know we need to pull X percent. We could even say the 8%, right? They come in a little high like that, saying this is what we got to have happen. If you've seen that or you get that, how do you work through that process with people and say, okay, look, this is doable or this is not doable? Like, how does that conversation typically go?
Yeah, and that's part of that overall financial planning process. So we try to stay away from a percentage of withdrawal. That the planning process we work through first is just let's understand the math, right? What is it that you need or want to live on in retirement net? Right. Let's get that number first.
So maybe the education, it kind of need to educate the potential client that, hey, I get that you've got this number in mind, but you may not need this, and here's why.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's having that flexibility of pulling more or less is great. But first, let's understand, is your expectation of retirement, the need you have, does it work? Right. Okay. If mathematically looking at the numbers, you need to pull 8%, that's going to be a hard conversation to say, look, this is not going to work. Gotcha. There's no way. Gotcha. Even if you went into an aggressive portfolio, you would have to hit the market just right for a long period of time to where, you're going to have a downturn at some point, but we don't know when that's going to be. Yeah. And to your point earlier, we've been on a pretty good run for a lot of years. Yeah. And the reality is markets, they revert to the mean. They come back to that average return. I always remind clients, I said, if anytime you're earning more than the market has averaged in the past, you've just borrowed from the future is all you've done. You're going to give some of that back at some point. So.
And we're riding this tech wave, but many do many think and are concerned, will we see a tech, an AI bubble pop, kind of like the .com era did, right? There's a lot of similarities. Hasn't happened yet. It's cruising right along. There's been some blips for sure.
Yeah, there's been some blips, but I mean, that I think to me kind of tells the story, is that there's been some concerns, and when certain concerns have come up, all of a sudden the market gets, pretty choppy and starts to head down. But then, we're good. We're back on it again. So
right.
You got to be careful. At some point, we're going to give some of this back. It's just, it has to. I mean, markets have not historically, and fundamentals haven't changed, right? So they have not historically been able to maintain a high level of return for a long period of time. I mean, at some point, it has to revert back to that average, cool back off, and then start again.
The Tax Smart Retiree is your comprehensive guide to mastering tax efficiency for a flourishing retirement. You will find indispensable advice and actionable strategies designed to enhance tax savings, maximize Social Security benefits, protect against market volatility, and develop a customized retirement plan. To get your free ebook, click the link in the show notes of today's episode and download your copy of the Tax Smart Retiree right now.
At the end of the day, you got to have a strategy for what you specifically need. 8% is probably not what and this is a conversation. I get it. It's hard to do because, when the market, last year, I think kicked back, what was 17, 18%, last number of years, it's been, 15 to 20, 22%, right? So it's easy to want to dig into all that and say, well, I want to get 20%, but you're also 100% at risk to get that 20%. You maybe not can handle that, depending on your age. And so somebody's like, I want 10% because, it's doable, it's attainable, yet 6% or 5% drives your actual plan and keeps you happy and comfortable and not worried about the risk. So again, every situation's different. You just got to build that strategy out to see what it needs, what it requires, what makes the engine go, and then make those tweaks from there. So,
and there may be periods of time in your strategy that you are pulling 8%. I mean, we have clients all the time. We're delaying Social Security, or they've got a pension, but we're not going to start it until 65. They retired early. So yeah, there may be times in your strategy, that you're pulling that 8%. But it's not a long-term sustainable strategy. You can't look at it just at one point in time and say, oh, we're pulling more than 4%. It's not going to work. Or, we're pulling 8%. See, it's worked fine.
And you don't want to
be a long-term strategy, and it has to be revisited every year. That's the other key too, is that this isn't a one-time set it, forget it, we're good. No, this is something you have to revisit every year. Where are we at? How is the portfolio maintaining based on your withdrawals, based on markets? Do we need to make adjustments? So
we don't want to be doing we're doing 8% every year. The market's great. Oh, the market's down. We're eating ramen tonight. Not,
that's right. That's right.
So,
I like having the discussion with clients. Hey, your portfolio and withdrawals have been good. You can actually spend more if you want.
Yeah.
That's an easier discussion than like, okay, you've been in.
You got to cut it in.
Other discussion with clients is, hey, you've been spending too much, right? This is not long-term sustainable.
Yeah.
And my role as an advisor isn't to be a friend, although I'm friends with a lot of my clients, but my role is to be that, that advisor, that person that is telling me, hey, this is the reality long-term, and this is just not sustainable.
Yeah. I mean,
we have to make some changes. So
it's my ethical, place to be that I got to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you got to pump the brakes, right? Or, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we're in great shape. We can do a little extra, or whatever the case is, right? So year to year, it's going to change over time. As always, we love to talk about some of Dave's stuff because he's never without interesting things to talk about. So we always appreciate that he provides content for people to discuss and banter back and forth. And of course, as always, if you need some help, you need a strategy or you need a second opinion, second set of eyes on the strategy maybe you do have, or maybe that back of the napkin you've been doing yourself, you want to get more serious about it, reach out to qualified professional in your area. Reach out to somebody like Phil. We talk podcasts, obviously, and YouTube is all over the country and the world, but you can work with a financial advisor just about anywhere. And a lot of them work with people in other states as well. Phil does also. So if you need some help, reach out to him. Get yourself some time onto the calendar. We'll have links in the show descriptions down below. philstaxhacks.com. That's philstaxhacks.com. And have a chat for yourself. Have a strategy session, a conference call, and just see if it's a good fit to continue on and move forward into more detailed conversations from there. There's no cost or obligation, so there's really no reason not to do it. So reach out to him and get started today. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and right here on YouTube. And we will see you next time here on Phil's Tax Hacks and other retirement facts on location.
All right. Take care.
Phil?
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.